this video we're going to look at environmental protection. So it covers two of those project objectives that we sort of looked at before. Protecting the environment, the natural environment, minimizing the damage. You can't do it completely that you're not going to have any effect whatsoever, but you're trying to minimize it within acceptable standards. And nuisance, minimizing the effect that the project has on the human environment. So let's look at those in a little bit more detail. So the human environment, when we do civil engineering construction, oftentimes we're in the middle of a community and we're going to cause disturbance. There's the old saying, you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. So and what we do is noisy, so we're going to cause noise pollution. It can be dusty. It can look, it's not going to look pretty, put it that way. Sometimes we're working on the road or close to roads and we're taking some of that road space up, which can cause traffic congestion. And sometimes when things go wrong, it can cause odor or insects or something like that. So there are all these potential effects that could come about through a construction project, and it is our job as engineers to try to minimize these to within acceptable standards. You don't want to sort of construct a job in the middle of this community and drive everyone crazy. At worst, the neighbours could all get together, get a lawyer, go to court and get you stopped. And that's happened before. Oftentimes the work you're doing has consents from the local authority, and it will have restrictions on, for example, noise. It'll say these are the noise limits. If you exceed those, you can't do the work, and so you will be legally bound to sit within those. And there are laws that say you can't create a public nuisance and stuff like that. So there are all sorts of things that can happen if you do not take care of that human environment. Try to minimize the nuisance that you cause to an absolute minimum. So do things like, if there's dust, put water down to reduce the dust. Use, in regards to noise, use silencers on jackhammers and things like that. Use new trucks that have mufflers on. Keep the site all nice and tidy. So this is just a mess, the visual one. Traffic congestion, traffic management plan. You have a plan in place to try to minimize the traffic congestion. You're not going to totally stop it, but you're trying to minimize it. Odor, you need to find out what's causing the odor and deal with it. So that's the human environment, and you need to be looking at all those. So there'll be a report, an environmental management plan, and that should include all those things. It should say what are going to be these effects, the noise, the visual, the dust, what are we going to do about it? And then when you're actually doing the work, you implement those control measures. So in a way, it's a lot like safety management. You identify the hazards, in this case the nuisance, and you figure out what are the control measures going to be, how we're going to reduce the effects of those nuisances. Another effect we can have is on the natural environment, especially earthworks, where you're digging up a hole, you're removing the topsoil of large areas. Rain hits the exposed clay, causes erosion, the clay ends up in the water. So that's what that sediment's all about. There's different ways that the clay can end up in the water. So it can be that trucks are actually tracking it onto the road. When it rains, the road the mud washes off the road into the stormwater system, which takes it into the local stream. Here you've actually got a whole lot of eroded material sort of coming down the hillside and causing problems. And this is an example. The bottom one there is what it looks like in a stream. So you can see that the stream's been polluted, and now it is polluting the bigger stream. Dust and smoke, so smoky trucks. You should be sort of trying to make sure that your trucks aren't belching smoke out. When you're doing earthworks, when it gets dry, the top layer of the dirt turns into dust and can cause problems, and you can solve that by watering it. Also, when you are cutting concrete and stuff, that causes a whole lot of dust, and that can also cause a problem. So that can cause air pollution, but when it rains, this in particular, the raindrops take the dust and then they carry it down into the stream. So once again, you've got the stream, the local water system being affected by these sort of things as well. And also we've got toxic materials. We use a lot of materials that are toxic to the community, natural ecosystems. So one of them is cement, concrete. It has a very high pH, it's very alkaline, and therefore when it gets washed into a stream it can raise the alkalinity, raise the pH of the stream, which can kill off the ecosystem that's there. Petrol and diesel, same thing. We use petrol and diesel to power our vehicles. If there's a spill, if the vehicle spills it when you're refueling, or if there's an accident where you roll the truck or something like that, there'll be petrol and diesel oil, and that can wash into the stream and cause problems too. So all of these things are related to pollution of the air and pollution of the water. So those are issues that we need to deal with in construction, civil engineering construction in particular. Most construction projects will have what's called consents, consent to do something. So you can't just go and dig up a hillside. You have to go to the local authority, the local council, in our case Auckland Council. You need to go there and you need to ask permission. And that permission is given in the form of what's called a consent. And that consent will have conditions. So before you're applying for the consent, you will have to prepare what's called an AEE, an assessment of environmental effects. You will say these are what the effects are going to be. So you look at the effects on the human environment, so you look at noise and dust and stuff like that, and you'll be looking at effects on the natural environment. So that document will have all of those things sort of identified, and then you'll be saying what your control measures are going to be. So one might be dust will be produced, and our control measure will be we will do regular watering. So every time it's dusty we will have a water truck on site and it will come along and it will water down the area and stop dust being produced. So those are the sort of things that are in an environmental and AEE. The AEE is submitted as part of the consent application, and the council will look at that and they'll say you're required to do whatever you said you'd do in the AEE, and they may add other conditions as well. The council will also have their own set of rules, council bylaws, and you have to adhere to those as well. So what you said you'd do in the AEE goes into what's called your site environmental protection plan. They could call it a construction protection plan. Your company will have an environmental management policy that will go into influencing what's in that site environmental protection plan, and the consent conditions, what the local authority says you have to do, will also go into that. And then there'll be bylaws, and then there'll be local issues as well. So all those things all come together, and you will have an environmental protection plan. You'll say these are the things that can affect the environment, the human environment and the natural environment. These are the controls we're going to put in place. Then obviously once you've done that, you need to implement those. So for example, sediment entering a water body, there's a document called TP9, Technical Publication 90, and that's one thing we'll be studying. So you'll say that, and that tells you all the control measures you need to put in place to protect against sediment entering a stream. So those sort of things. So you can see that it's quite a process, and it is quite important. As responsible engineers, we do not want to cause undue disturbance to people. We do not want to damage the natural environment, and so that's what this management is all about.